Hello everybody, and welcome back to the One Piece review show thing that I do, starring such famous One Piece characters as, Panda. Yeah, not Panda Man, just Panda, because that's all you can see right now on the camera. Starring Panda and, Po! Yeah, wait, isn't Po the name of the panda from Kung Fu Panda? Oh my god, that worked! Panda? Po! There you go! I only saw the first Kung Fu Panda. Do they get better? Do they get worse? Is there a new one coming out? I don't know. I went to a movie last night and I saw John Wick 4 is coming out, so check that out. Anyway, that's random movie discussions aside. This will be One Piece chapter 1074 review titled Mark 3! Okay, alright, you know what? Okay, Oda, I should just say that I was already on board with the fact that we were going to the future land, you know, the scientific advancement, you know, that Vegapunk has like 500 years above his contemporaries. I was already on board with all this, the crazy science stuff we were going to see in this arc. But now that you're titling a chapter Mark 3, you've earned my undying respect. You already had my undying respect, Oda, but now you have even more of that, okay? No, before you just had my dying respect. Now you have my undying respect. Because, you know, like, I'm a big fan. I'm like a sucker for that. Like, I loved it in Iron Man when, you know, Tony Stark would always upgrade the different armors. You know, it's just like Iron Man armor Mark 7. I'm like, oh yeah! You know, so I'm a sucker for that. So this is gonna be great. So we continue on with the Germa Double Six's cover story slash the Mads flashback. We see some dissension in the ranks. We begin to see where a little bit of the disagreements emerged. You know, if you get a group together and that group consists of Vegapunk, the greatest scientist in the world, a member of the Germa Double Six, Judge Vinsmoke, that wants to revive the Germa's former glory in taking over the entire North Blue, Queen, a man that just basically wants to create as many horrible viruses to plague the entire world, so much that his epithet later on in the Beast Pirates would be Queen the Plague, and Caesar Clown with, oh my god, there is not enough time in the day to list all of Caesar's crimes, okay? But if you get that crew together, they're gonna argue quite a bit, and we see in the cover page them arguing over who will become the number 2. So it's actually very interesting that all of them can at least agree that Vegapunk is the true genius. Like, each of these guys are geniuses in their own particular fields, but Vegapunk is not only a genius in their individual fields. Like, Vegapunk was way better at artificial devil fruits than Caesar, way better than cloning technology than Judge, and if Vegapunk really wanted to, it's kind of against his whole nature, but if he wanted to make a really good virus that would plague the entire One Piece world, he could go Old Testament, you know, like, seriously. So he was better than that than Queen. So they at least could all agree on that, but then it was the disagreement was who's gonna be Vegapunk's number 2. And so we see them all fighting here. We see Judge now having the Germa Double Six belt buckle. We have his spear. He's stabbing Caesar with his spear. Caesar, of course, has the Logia gas fruit, so, you know, the spear's going through him. And then we have Queen in the background about to, like, hit them both. And, you know, Caesar's attacking, you know, trying to, like, kick Judge. So there's a disagreement, and obviously there was a falling out. Also, the government got involved at some point and broke up Mads. Now, I'm not really sure if the government broke up Mads first, or if, like, the three of these guys were basically like, you know, screw you guys, we're out of here. And then they all left, and that's how Mads fell apart. And then, you know, because Vegapunk didn't have any more help, that's when the government asked him to join, you know, their ranks, and he went ahead and did that. Not really sure, but we see the story progressing here. Also, I love how Queen progressively gets more and more girthy as this cover series goes on. Also, I forgot to bring this up because it really doesn't matter, though. It's an interesting little Easter egg. Judge's eyebrows, all right? Because during Totland, when we saw the other members of the Vinsmoke siblings, it's interesting to note that Ichiji and Niji and Yonji, their eyebrows, I believe Reiju as well, their eyebrows all swirl this direction. I think this direction, and then Sanji being the exception, yeah, his swirl in the opposite direction, or whichever, you know, it's like they're opposite directions, but they're both, like, swirling swirling, you know, away from your face, okay? Judges swirl, like, inside of the face, like this, okay? And then we know that Sola, his wife, that's where, like, Sanji and the siblings got their eyebrows. So Judge's eyebrows do a little bit of a swirl, but it's, like, more from, like, inside, you know? So they're more, like, asymmetrical, whereas his are, like, perfectly symmetrical on both sides. I only bring this up because during Totland, Judge's eyebrows were, like, a point of contention. Like, what's the deal with Judge's eyebrows? Because people thought that Judge's eyebrows were going to be the same as Sanji, indicating that Judge is more like Sanji than he would like to admit. But no, it's very clearly, they're different, actually, than all of his children's are, you know? So, interesting there. Just thought I would bring it up. Anyway, so we start off this chapter, actually not right after we left off in the last one, because that last chapter ended with St. J. Garcia Saturn on the government ship headed up by Kizaru, heading toward Egghead Island. So we're not gonna, you know, see what's up with him in this chapter, of course. You know, Oda's not gonna immediately continue on with that cliffhanger. That one's too good. So we cut back to the city of Egghead. So in the fabrication sphere, you know, where all the regular scientists live and are now held up in, like, the bomb shelters and the factories because the government invaded, okay? So we see a bunch of explosions going on, and the remaining government soldiers, I don't know if you want to call these guys members of Cypher Pole Zero, because they're not wearing the white uniforms, they're just wearing the regular black uniforms like most government officials wear and like other members of Cypher Pole. So maybe they're pulled from like a bunch of different Cypher Pole agencies. I feel like when it comes to Cypher Pole Aegis Zero, they're the best of the best of the best. They don't really have like foot soldier dudes that just walk around. I guess Spondum counts technically. Spondum is actually weaker than a standard soldier, so I guess that kind of punches a hole in that theory. But they're, you know, at least Spondum is dressed in the same way that like Lucci and Kaku and Stussy all are. These dudes just look like regular government employees. Anyway, they were left down below because the only ones that reached the lab sphere were Stussy, Kaku, and Lucci using Geppo, as well as the Seraphim. So the other government officials are just down in the city. Basically, they were ordered by Lucci to lock down the island, to destroy all of the ports and the ships, so the Straw Hats and Vegapunk could not escape. So I guess they were in the middle of doing that. They still had a job to do, when all of a sudden, a bunch of brand spanking new pacifistas arrive and begin to just bombard them. And they're firing back, and these new pacifistas have the access to Kuma's Paw ability, or at least one of the aspects of his power, to create the bubbles. So there's this one government soldier that has like a bazooka, not a laser bazooka, just your regular run-of-the-mill bazooka, but he takes out this bazooka and fires it, and the pacifista just basically takes like a swipe of his hand, creates one of Kuma's bubbles in the shape of a paw, and it just blocks the explosion in midair. I like to think it's some sort, and they call it like the bubble shield. Like, this is the new pacifista Mark III. Title drop right away. We're getting into it. And it's like, this is the bubble shield. You know, you can't break it, okay? And it's like, oh man, these pacifistas, they're way more advanced than those prototypes that were used at the War of the Best 2 years ago, right? So this is impressive. First of all, let's just talk about the bubble shield before I get off topic. I like to think the bubble shield is like a vacuum shield. I don't know anything about physics or how this works, but if you fire a rocket and it hits a big bubble of vacuum space, I imagine that would probably just detonate at that point and no damage would be incurred. Yeah, let's go with anime logic on that one. But at any rate, the dangerous things is, of course, the original pacifistas, like the PX4. Remember back at Sabaody when it took, like, Luffy and really all of the Straw Hats together, but it took Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji combo attack together to drop one of the prototypes, and that was the PX4. Now, the impressive thing about these new pacifistas Mark III compared to the prototypes is the prototypes did not have access to Kuma's Devil Fruit ability at all. They looked like Kuma, they had Kuma's strength and his intimidating demeanor, but they didn't have the ability to fire the Paw, you know, shockwaves or Urasusa shock or send anybody flying. They had the laser cannons in place where, you know, Kuma's paw pads were. So they could fire the laser beams out of their palms and out of their mouths, but that was pretty much it. There is definitely advantage to building your Death Terminators in the shape of Kuma, who is like, you know, 25 feet tall, giant, imposing figure named the Tyrant. So if you see those things rolling into your town, you're going to be rather afraid of them, right? So there's an advantage there to just kind of intimidate the enemy, and the laser cannons out of their mouths and hands and everything. But these ones not only seem, obviously, I'm sure they have a strength buff, defense buff, they can move move faster. They have the Dom shoes on. They're outfitted in all the gear. They have armor. They can fly. Probably really hard to hit these things. Even if you could hit this thing with a bazooka, even if it didn't use the bubble shield, probably not going to do much of anything. They have really cool shades. Kind of reminds me of the police officer Kuma that we saw a few chapters ago. So it's able to use the bubble shields, and it still has the laser cannons equipped. We see the lasers on their palms, like always. They also seem to be a little bit more intelligent. The other pacifistas, the prototypes, I believe they were able to speak, but it was more of just generic, like, scanning, Monkey D. Luffy identified, firing, that kind of stuff. These ones are able to handle more complex commands, as we're going to see in a second, and they're also basically just walking through the town, basically like, you know, resistance is futile, please surrender and report to Factory B at once, exterminate. I mean, okay, if you're going to build an army of Death Terminator robots, you gotta program in either the Dalek subroutine or the Cyberman subroutine. Okay, you gotta have either the, you know, delete or exterminate or eradicate or eviscerate. You gotta have something in there, you know, at some point there, right? Okay. So, who activated these new pacifistas? And that was actually Sentomaru, okay? So Sentomaru is not dead. I think we could all assume that. Sentomaru was rescued by the, you know, the scientists that lived in the town and took him into one of the factories and kind of like barricaded the door and shut it with like the bulkhead or whatever. And so they're treating Sentomaru's injuries, but Sentomaru's not going down like that. Sentomaru's not just going to be like, all right, I guess I did what I was supposed to do. No, Sentomaru's like, okay, screw the cipher pull. You know what? This is my day off. Release all of the freaking pacifistas. Oh, Sentomaru, this is so awesome. He's like, I'm not going down without a fight. This was my day off. I was staying at home and I was gonna veg out on the couch, smoke a little something, and watch a romantic comedy. And now I got stabbed in the back by an awakened leopard zone user and the government's knocking at my door. You know what? Protocol Alpha, Beta, Delta, Gamma, Sigma, Omega again, whatever. Release all 50 Pacifista Mark IIIs. Decimate everybody on the island, okay? Like, holy crap, Sentomaru. All right? So, he doesn't actually issue the order, like, kill all of the Cypherpole agents. He's basically like, hey, listen, Vegapunk, old man Vegapunk, he's got to get out of here. Sentomaru recalls when Luffy in Gear 5 was like, don't worry, Axe Guy, I'll help out old man Vegapunk. So he's like, yeah, just make sure he gets off the island. He's your creator. The government is trying to reach Sentomaru because remember, Sentomaru is an official Marine. 2 years ago, he wasn't, but since then, he has become the science captain of the Marines. There's probably like a rank equivalent or something. I don't know if he's considered like a captain in the Marines or something, but Sentomaru does have a Marine like officer jacket, okay? I would imagine, because Vegapunk's the one that's in the lab cooking up all this stuff all the time, Sentomaru's the one that actually knows the practical applications during battle. So, like, during Marineford, it wasn't Vegapunk that showed up with the pacifistas at Marineford, it was Sentomaru that showed up. So I think that's why they gave Sentomaru an official Marine rank. Like, whenever it comes to, like, deploying the pacifistas and Vegapunk's weaponry into the field, Sentomaru is the Marine that has the rank to actually order them around. Okay? And so Sentomaru's there, and it's just like, okay, all 50 of these units go out there. The government's still trying to call me because they think I'm on their side. Well, whatever. I guess I'm just gonna do whatever I want now. And Sentomaru's allegiance is with Vegapunk, okay? Because Vegapunk took Sentomaru in when he was just an orphan and raised him essentially as a father. And so Sentomaru really doesn't have any other family, so he's like, okay, I'm going to help him out no matter what, even if it means going against the Marines and even the government. Also, by the way, this is a little bit of a point of contention that people have brought up as well, and it's just a not even a mistranslation, it's just a misinterpretation of what the word means. So, a lot of people seem to think Sentomaru is Kizaru's nephew, because during Sabaody, Sentomaru, at least some of the translations will directly translate it to, you know, Uncle Kizaru. And it's like, hey, isn't, you know, Sentomaru, Kizaru's, like, aren't they family? So that maybe Sentomaru's the traitor. Maybe he's the one that lowered the Frontier Dome to help Kizaru in. And it's like, no. So, they're not related by blood. It just means uncle in the sense of, like, a Yakuza family, okay? It's like, you know, like Big Boss boss Kizaru or something like that. There's like a certain level of respect there, but they are not like actually blood related. And actually, from what we heard from Vegapunk's like discussion, Sentomaru was an orphan and he didn't really have any family, and then Vegapunk raised him. That was the general vibe. I think if there was a blood relation between Sentomaru and Kizaru, that would have been referenced. But no, he was just referring to Kizaru in this specific kind of honorific that you would at like a Yakuza boss or like a Mafia Don or something like that. So there's no blood relation between them there. And even if there was, it seems like Sentomaru is definitely more loyal to Vegapunk here. So talking a little bit about exactly what makes like Mark III. So there's a couple of different ways to approach this. So was the prototypes Mark I, or it's a prototype? So maybe the prototypes didn't even have a Mark number. You know what I mean? So maybe it went prototype and then Mark I, Mark II, and now Mark III. Where do the Seraphim fit in all this? So what I think is the Seraphim are a separate thing. They're still pacifistas, and you see pacifista and the PX, and PX is tattooed on the Seraphim themselves. We saw that during when they attacked Amazon Lily. I think we saw like Mihawk's like shirt, and we saw it like PX on his skin or whatever. So PX, pacifista, is that line, but what I think it goes with, it might go prototype, the ones that we saw at Sabaody in the pre-time skip, those were Mark I. Then there was a Mark II, and now Mark III, and then the Seraphim are like PX Seraphim. It's like Mark IV, but they're not really Mark IV. I think it's a different line altogether. It would be like the Pacifista Mach 1, 2, and 3, and then Pacifista Seraphim are like separate. You could say that the prototypes were Mark I, and the Seraphim were Mark II, and then these guys are Mark III. I guess you could say that, but I'm just not feeling it because this line is clearly like just like taking the template of Kuma and then just outfitting it with better technology, better weaponry, a better AI, because these guys are robots. They're not cyborgs. They're not part, well, I guess maybe there's something. No, I don't really think there's even anything organic in these guys. These guys are just robots. I don't think they're cyborgs, or they're androids is what they are. They're, yeah, maybe their skin is like the Terminator and their skin is like organic, you know, living tissue over metal endoskeleton. Maybe it's something like that. But yeah, that's like, so the prototypes look like Kuma. And then Mark II would be Seraphims that are all very different. You know, Warlord DNA, Seraphim, Green Blood to make the Seraphims have Devil Fruits, and then Lunarian DNA. And then Mark III going back to the Kuma design. So I think the Seraphim are something separate. It's all part of like maybe the Pacifista project, but then there's like Mark I, II, and III, and then Seraphim are over here. Something to look at like that. So it's been 2 years since we've seen the Pacifista prototypes at the War of the Best. Also remember, during the Return to Sabaody arc, right after the time skip, we got to see 2 of the prototypes fight against Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. Luffy knocked out one of them with just a armament hockey, jet pistol, and then Sanji and Zoro took out another one, and it wasn't really that big of a deal. Sentomaru even mentioned in that fight those were just the prototypes, so obviously they haven't gotten stronger. You know, honestly, it's been 2 years. I can see Vegapunk improving the design a lot. Like, do you see how many new models of, like, iPhone come out, like, in the span of 2 years? You know, you could literally have had it, like, those prototypes weren't even a mark number, okay? They were prototypes for the Pacifistas. And then 6 months into the time skip, Mark I comes out. And then another 6 months, 1 year into the time skip, Mark II comes out. And then 6 months ago, Vegapunk created 50 of Mark IIIs already. Mark IV is being ready to be shipped. You know what I mean? Like, Vegapunk's working, like, round the clock on these things. So, yeah, this is what he came up with. So he's got bubble shields, increased defensive capabilities. Probably don't have, like, every single attack that Kuma could do. Probably can't send people flying, like, you know, the other side of the planet or anything. But still, they could do some crazy powers with this, like, impenetrable bubble shield, plus the lasers, and plus the advanced AI. They're able to communicate a little bit better and all that kind of crap. Point is, these random government soldiers really have no hope of surviving this onslaught, okay? They really can't fight back. So now we have an army. We have a straight-up army of 50 of these things. Now, when Daddy Kizaru shows up at the port, that's going to be a different story on how these guys are going to deal with him. But remember, they have the Dom shoes so they can fly. They might have access to those photonic gloves that can touch lights. And they have the lasers. Kizaru has lasers. These things have lasers. Look, given enough time, Kizaru could slaughter all of these Mark IIIs. I'm just saying that I don't think he's just going to walk on the island and then just just wipe out all 50 of these Mark III units in the span of like that. I think they're going to at least buy a little bit of time when Kizaru arrives, that he's not just going to be able to immediately go to the Labosphere, immediately go after Sentomaru or Vegapunk or Luffy. It's going to distract him quite a bit. He's being pelted from his own lasers from 50 different directions, and, you know, they might be able to use these bubble shields to, like, direct or, like, refract the light from his own lasers, okay? They're robots, so he can't really blind them. I mean, I guess he could try, but they're robots, you know what I mean? They have sunglasses. That's basically how you get around Kizaru blinding you. You just wear sunglasses. So, I'm gonna give a little bit of trouble when Kizaru arrives there. Don't get me wrong. I think he'll be able to wipe them all out eventually, given enough time, but not instantaneously. Unless Kizaru has some crazy powerful attack where he could just be like, all right, everyone, this is going to take a while, so I'm just going to nuke everything. He might be able to do that too. We don't really know. But anyway, Mark III pacifistas are on the move there. No matter what happens, you must ensure your creator escapes. So now we cut back over to the Labosphere. Luffy and Chopper have returned. They were kind of scouring the entire lab looking for Vegapunk. Could not find him anywhere. Luffy is exhausted. I also think this is from maybe going into Gear 5th, because Luffy looks like very, very exhausted from just running up and down a lab a bunch of times. Granted, Vegapunk's lab is huge. He was running around all over the place. I get that, but Luffy seems way more exhausted than he normally would be. So I think going into Gear 5th definitely drained him a little bit more there. He also broke his own Dom shoes while running around. So, you know, a lot of wear and tear down on those. So Luffy cannot fly anymore. I don't know if that'll be relevant. I mean, he could fly anyway when he goes into Gear 4th and 5th, but yeah. I also love the fact that Chopper is taking full advantage of the Dom shoes, and he's just floating around like he's like happy. He's like, yay, I can fly around now. I'm just as tall as everybody else. So, way to go, Chopper. But anyway, yeah, so they're kind of regrouping in the lab. Zoro, Brook, and Stussy are all there, and they get outfitted with their future gear. Brook is awesome because he basically looks like a skeleton astronaut. He has like one of those, not even like an actual astronaut helmet. It's like one of those like in science fiction, like an old like a fishbowl helmet. Basically. So he looks like an astronaut, kind of alien sort of guy. Brook looks really cool. Zoro has a really cool leather jacket. He's got his swords on his back now, which doesn't happen very often. Zoro always obviously keeps his 3 katanas on his side in his little stomach warmer thing. So now he has them on his back, which, I don't know, I always felt like it's a cool thing in practice, right? The idea to have a sword on your back. So I'm going to use Law's old Kikoku here. You know, you have a sword on your back, and it's like, yeah, I'm a badass samurai, man, walking around, you know, Edo period Japan. Oh, there are some wandering Ronin. I shall challenge them to a fight! I shall challenge them to a fight! And you get pelted with arrows, but just like, hold on, just let me... There we go. I loved it in Bleach whenever you had Toshiro Hitsugaya, who's like this short guy from Squad 10. He has his sword on his back, and it's like super long, but because it's Bleach and they're magical swords, when he grabs his sword, the scabbard just disappears into ice. So he just like grabs it on his back and he's just and he can just draw it whenever, because otherwise it's completely impractical. But anyway, yeah, so Zoro's got his swords on his back. Stussy has changed out from her Cypher Pole Zero outfit. She is now wearing basically the same outfit. She's kind of wearing the combination of Nami and Robin's outfits, where Nami just has the really cute outfit, which, once again, I'm not really sure if they're panties or like swimwear or something, but anyway, she's wearing that and a leather jacket over it. So I have to say, Stussy is looking very... I mean, yeah, legs, lots of legs. I wasn't really that into legs, but, legs! Guys, the Stussy has legs. Okay, cool. Anyway, the lab was wrecked because the Seraphim, like Mihawk, was like slicing it. Kumo was like Urusasa shocking her. S-Hawk and S-Bear were attacking it. But everybody there seems to be okay. Atlas has been repaired. We see here, it's like this big double page with like 18 different things going on at once. Atlas is repaired. She's got her face fixed. They found some spare parts. We see York. She's up and moving around. Now, York, interesting, she's actually a giant woman, okay? Kind of like Atlas. I don't think as big as Atlas, because Atlas is kind of like stooping down, and Luffy said that Atlas was about the size of Kaido. And so York is not that tall, but she's like Brook is right next to York, and Brook is like 9 feet tall, and he only comes up to like her belly button. So York is probably like, I don't know, twice the height of Brooke. She's probably like 16, 17 feet tall. She's probably the same height as like Katakuri. So she's a giant woman. She's just waking up, you know, and because of what she does and she just eats all the time, her body is kind of like, you know, not like the proportions always change. So I didn't really know how exactly tall she was. But now she's like standing up and she's like slimmed down. So she's like, yeah, she's a giant woman. She kind of still has no idea what's going on. Shaka's kind of working at the monitors and he's kind of like recapping the whole situation here. Because when Zoro, Brooke, and Stussy arrive, they change clothes, and Zoro's like, what's going on? I thought we were leaving. I thought we were supposed to be on the ship getting out of here with, like, this Vegapunk dude. Zoro hasn't even met Vegapunk yet. He doesn't even know what he looks like. So he's like, aren't we leaving? And then, you know, Shaka's at the terminal, and he's like, yeah, a couple of issues we have to solve before that. Number one, the Stella body's missing. That's kind of the main issue. You can't really escape with the Stella body if you can't find the Stella body. Also, Frontier Dome issue. We apparently do not have control over it anymore, so we are essentially locked in. We could try to leave, but the lasers would probably pelt us because the Frontier Dome is active and I cannot turn it off. So those are the two main issues at the moment, okay? But he kind of admits that's like, well, you know, you guys can't really do much about the Frontier Dome. I mean, I'm the only one that can really work with that. Like, the satellites are the only ones that have the know-how to really work with the Frontier Dome. So you guys should really focus on finding Vegapunk, the main body. That's kind of the big issue right now. We don't know where he is. Luffy brings up, he's just like, oh yeah, he was with Bonnie, and I don't know where she went either. And Shaka's like, oh yeah, Bonnie is on the monitor. I know where she's at. He's like, well, why didn't you tell me before I was running around this whole lab? It's just like, yeah, well, we're looking for the main body right now. Bonnie's kind of an afterthought. We really don't care about her right now. So, a couple of things here to address. As for the person that has, like, hacked into the network and is messing around with the Frontier Dome, this is weird, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Is it crazy to think that it might be Shaka? Because I'm going over all the other possibilities here, and I really don't see anybody else. People have brought up Caribou. We'll get to Caribou in a second. I think Caribou's going to be relevant in another way. But this is like really, really, really advanced tech that we're dealing with here, okay? This Frontier Dome is like force field technology that even in like our world we don't have yet, okay? So it's like a force field technology, laser technology, and it's like it's programmed by Vegapunk and the satellites. The only people that would be able to mess with this and actually know what they're doing to the point of like turning it on and turning it off and like hacking into the network and like all that kind of stuff, you'd have to know a lot about computers. And like, this is the One Piece world, so there's not a lot of people that know a lot about computers. Pretty much Vegapunk and the satellites are the foremost experts in that regard. Stussy might know, but she has no idea, because she was like, you know, down below in the fabrication sphere when the Frontier Dome went down, and she was like confused. So it wasn't Stussy, and she's clearly on their side now. So I'm starting to now think it might be either Shaka or York, because York has always been in the background, like, we don't know what's up with her. Now, it might not be a duplicitous thing. It might be like, oh yeah, I decided to keep the Frontier Dome up because of this reason that is beneficial to Vegapunk, or something like that. I don't know. I don't think it's gonna be like, if it is one of the satellites, I don't think one of the satellites is like, I am evil now. You know, I don't think it's anything like that. I think it's like some other reason why they're choosing that they don't want the Straw Hats and Vegapunk to leave yet. There's like another reason behind that. So I'm thinking it might be Shaka or York, just because York is kind of a blank slate right now, and all she does is just sit around and eat and go to the bathroom and eat and sleep and go to the bathroom. So it's like, it seems like Oda wants to paint it like, yeah, York, that's her entire job. She has nothing else going on. Yeah. And then Shaka, just because he's wearing the helmet and we don't really get to see his facial expressions, it's like, and he's Shaka the good. So the good aspect of Vegapunk, but maybe it's a kind of thing where it's like, oh no, I had to keep the Frontier Dome up to keep you in here for your own good. It's like, ooh, okay, you know, because the good aspect can also be skewed a certain way, you know what I mean? So I guess we'll see how that goes. Okay, so the group decides, all right, we're gonna do the Scooby-Doo strategy here, and we're gonna split up gang and look for clues, okay? So, we have, it looks like Nami, Brooke, and Jinbei, they're in one panel, and Nami's like, okay, well, the faster we find Vegapunk, the faster we can get off this island, so let's go. It's like gonna be a war zone here pretty soon. Sentomaru even says as much, like something's gonna go down on this island pretty soon, or maybe that was one of the government soldiers that said that, but like, it's gonna be a war zone pretty damn soon. So Nami, Jinbei, and Brooke, I guess, are one team. And then Sanji is like, of course, fawning over Stussy. So Sanji is just like, oh, Stussy, I'll go with you. And it's, okay, this is really funny, okay? So in this one panel, it's in the background. There's one panel with Nami and Robin talking, but in the background, you see Sanji approaching Stussy. Like for the first time, like the first time Sanji met Stussy. So you see the background where Sanji has hearts over his, you know, head, because he's just like, you know, head over heels for Stussy. He's like, hey, Stussy! And then you just see the, like, the turn of Stussy's head, like, what? And then in the very next panel, Stussy just turns around and is like, I'm just gonna go look too. So the way I think this played out was thusly. Sanji looks over at Stussy, wearing the future gear, and he's like, oh, hello there! And then Stussy's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna go look for Vegapunk too. And then Sanji's like, I'll go with you! And then Stussy's like, I'm sure you will. Just like completely indifferent, like does not care. Like just like, alright, yeah, okay. Just like, yeah. So that's gonna be that dynamic. Now, this is really funny. Zoro is like, alright, I guess we're looking for this Vegapunk guy? Alright, well, guess I'll lend a hand, it's the least I could do. And like, Sanji, like, puts him in a headlock. All of the Straw Hats are like, no, no, no. It's like, this is 1,000+ chapters into this story at this point. I love how all of the Straw Hats unanimously now, except for Luffy, all of the Straw Hats are like, no, no more of this shit. We are not letting Zoro go anywhere by himself anymore, alright? He has to have a buddy with him at all times, not by himself, okay? So they're all like, no, you're not going anywhere. You and Luffy are staying right here in the control room. Somebody has to watch Lucci and Kaku, because if those guys wake up, that's going to be a problem. Stussy does not really say anything about how long they're going to be knocked out, or, you know, what their condition will be when they wake up or anything. She doesn't say that, so it's like, I guess they can wake up whenever. And so, you know what? Remarkably, Luffy and Zoro actually agree, and they're like, okay, and they just crash on the couch while the rest of the Straw Hats go looking for Vegapunk. So, Luffy's pretty exhausted. He's just like, huh, hey Zoro, how you doing? And Zoro's like, wow, you're really out of it. You're really winded. And he's like, yeah, even when I go looking for Vegapunk, I go 100%. Whew, boy. I think it's the Gear 5th that really drained him a lot in that instance there. But Zoro's like, man, this is really a pain that we're stuck here waiting. Oh well, I guess they can handle it. And it is actually a really good thing that they're there, because Lucci and Kaku, even if they do wake up, Luffy and Zoro are right there. And in fact, Zoro even says, he's like, man, you know, with us being here next to Kaku and Lucci, this kind of reminds me of, it takes us back to Water 7 a little bit. You know, by the way, I guarantee you at this point right here in the anime, there's going to be an entire episode where we have a flashback to Water 7, because that's usually just what happens. It'd be like, man, this really takes me back to Water 7. Do, 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 do. And then half the episode is a recap of Water 7. Just like going back, okay. Also, we see Kaku and Lucci there, still asleep. Alright, couple of things with this. Number one, they could be faking. They could have come back to consciousness and they're like, okay, I'm not moving. They're trained assassins, okay? So it's like, we got knocked out. I'm gonna pretend to keep being knocked out, and I'm going to listen to what's going on around me, okay? And then sneak attack, right? Also, because Zoro brought up, you know, hey, this brings me back to Water 7, and remember, Lucci and Kaku were working undercover for Gale-La while they were doing their mission in Water 7. All right, look. I know the amnesia thing has been played out to death in One Piece. I know it's been done to death. It was done with Big Mom twice. It was done with Sabo. But how hilarious would it be for Kaku and Lucci to wake up and think that they were working for Gale-La? like Kaku wakes up and he's like, oh man, gee willikers, everybody. Where are we at right now? I gotta get to work. I gotta, you know, shape up that ship by 5 o'clock or Iceberg's gonna have my butt. You know, it's just like, and then Lucci gets up and he starts talking in ventriloquism with Hattori. Actually, is Hattori with him? Hold on, let me check this. Ooh, I don't see Hattori. I don't see Hattori next to Lucci. He might be in the chapter in the background. I don't know. Somebody would have to go and check every single panel, but I don't see... In the panel where it's Luffy and Zoro hanging out on the couch, and then Kaku and Lucci are next to them, I don't see Hattori anywhere. So Hattori might have went off somewhere, or he's hiding inside of Lucci's hat. I don't know. Hattori might be off doing something. I don't know. I'm telling you, watch out for that bird. I swear to God. Okay, so anyway, yeah, that's the situation there. But if they woke up and they remembered who they were at Galley-La, and it's like, that would be great. Okay, and then we can never do Amnesia after this for the rest of the story. They don't even return to who they thought they were. They literally just think that they're Galley-La foremen, you know, for the rest of the entire series. They just go and get actual, honest jobs back at Water 7, and that's it. That's the end of Lucci and Kaku's character. Just like, sure, why not? Anyway, so now we cut over to a different section of the lab. We cut over to the PAW Room. This was the room that has the paw on it that housed Kuma's memory bubble. So last time we saw Bonnie approaching the bubble, Vegapunk as a baby was like, no, Bonnie, that's all of Kuma's pain. You can't handle it. And Bonnie's like, I know this isn't his pain. These are my father's memories. And so she touches the bubble and she enters Kuma's memory world. Yes! I knew it! I knew it! Oh, I love a good memory world arc. It worked great in Yu-Gi-Oh! It'll work great here. Also, a lot of people brought up that's basically the plot of One Piece Odyssey, so maybe that's why Oda put this in here now. I don't know. I don't care. But Bonnie enters Kuma's memory world, alright? So Bonnie enters this vast field where we see Kuma as a child, and he looks just like he did in the SBS. He looks very beaten up, though. He definitely has been abused in his childhood, and he's there, and he's huge. I mean, Bonnie is like walking over, and you know, Kuma as a child is like hunched over, like crying, like in a ball, and he's just as big as like she is, basically. And so Bonnie's just like, Dad, are you okay? Are you my father? And this is the kind of memory world rules where you can't interact with the memory. So sometimes the memory world, like in Yu-Gi-Oh, you can go back in time and actually like interact with your own memories. In this case, it doesn't seem to be the case. In this case, it's like Bonnie's like trying to talk with him, but it's just a memory, okay? So then two individuals show up that are silhouetted. We don't see their face, and they start yelling at Kuma as a child. They're yelling at him. They're saying just like, what are you doing over here? If you don't get back right now, we're all gonna get punished. Come on, get going! And they're like beating the crap out of Kuma. Kuma is crying, and he's just like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. They'll just... And the other guys are just like, they'll kill the rest of us if you don't come back. We gotta go. And so it's just... Yeah, it's just like, and Kuma just says, if I go back, then I'm just gonna die anyway. And so that, okay. So at that point, as Kuma is just getting beaten on, Bonnie can no longer, like, it's like in a dream when, like, you're trying to move forward and you can't. You ever have that where, like, you're trying to... I remember one time, I had a dream where I was in my basement back when I lived at my mom's house, and there was, like, zombies coming out of the basement, and I was, like, trying to get up the stairs, but it's, like, every step is, like, through, like, 10 inches of mud, and it's like, oh, God. You know, it's kind of like that. So Bonnie can't, like, interact, and all she can do is watch horrified as her father, as a child, is just beaten over the head with these like sticks and baseball bats and everything, and just blood everywhere, and like he's getting teeth knocked out, and then she just like, and then she gets kicked out of the memory world bubble. So a couple of things to break this down. So, Kuma is based off of, at least in his childhood when we saw him in the SBS, he's reading the book and he's carrying the wood on his back. He is based off of a Japanese philosopher, and he was also a farmer during the Edo period. Right, I think he died right at the end of the Edo period, right around the Bakumatsu period. Ninomiya Sontoku, okay? And it was actually, I'd done a whole video on the life of Kuma where I mention him in full, but the basis is he was essentially a very, he was like a model of diligence and perseverance. He was born into a relatively poor family and a very low system, like a low caste system in Japan. Both of his parents died when he was a teenager. He was adopted by his uncle, and he worked really hard at his uncle's place, and he studied constantly, and then he was given like an abandoned plot of land, and he built up that plot of land. He got his household back, and then he worked with some like the local government to increase the economy of a certain area. And then the shogun found out about that and eventually gave him like a whole domain and like a prefecture to rule over and stuff. So he has a statue of him will be outside of a lot of like Japanese like school buildings as kind of a symbol of like, hey, if you study hard, if you work hard, perseverance, diligence, all that stuff, you can achieve great things. And so that's kind of who Kuma's based off of. Now here in the flashback, it's very clear Kuma is a runaway slave at this point. It's very clear Kuma was a slave. For the Tenryubito, we even see the silhouettes of the Tenryubito. The people that were beating on him were probably other slaves that were afraid that, okay, you ran away. So if you ran away, if the Tenryubito find out that you ran away, they're going to punish all of us slaves. So you need to come back so we don't die. And Kuma's like, no. And then they start beating him because it's like, if you don't come back, we're dead. You know what I mean? So very, very dark stuff that we're, tackling here, that Oda's dealing with here. We have a brief scene of a castle, and then we see the silhouettes of the Tenryubito with their distinctive hairstyles that look like antennas. So this might have very well have been in Marijois, and in fact, in the very next scene, after Bonnie gets ejected from the memory bubble, the very next scene is we cut back to the red port, where the actual body of PX0, Bartholomew Kuma, is climbing up the red line. So definitely heading back to Marijois, and this is probably where this flashback took place, okay? Now, Bonnie gets ejected from it, and she's like, I didn't steel my resolve enough. Because she didn't know what to expect when she entered that memory bubble. She didn't know anything about this, probably. Her dad probably did not tell her anything about being a slave at Marijois or anything, so she was not prepared for it. So now that she's more prepared, she's like, okay, I know what I'm expecting here. I'm going to try this again. So she reaches out again because she needs to understand what her father went to. She needs to understand why he decided to make the decision to become a pacifista to begin with, okay? So she's like, I'm going to try this again. I think I could steel my resolve, and I think I'll be okay this time. And so she reaches out to enter the bubble again. We don't see what happens. We see Kuma still climbing up the red line, and that's the scene we get with them. We have a very brief scene with Pythagoras. The different satellites kind of went all over the lab. Shaka remained in the main lab. All the other ones are probably roaming the lab trying to find Vegapunk, the main body, and Pythagoras is walking around, and he's just like, oh, gee shucks, come on, main Stella body, where'd you go to? And then he just hears like a sound behind him, and he's just like, what? And then boom, the whole freaking tower where Pythagoras was just explodes. And it's like, okay, that happened. Shit, Pythagoras might be dead. I'm still exactly... Is Pythagoras an actual dude, like a clone, like Lilith, or is he just a robot? Or is he a clone wearing a robot suit? I don't know. But yeah, I don't think he's dead, but probably incapacitated at the moment. Oh, by the way, there was a line earlier in the chapter where they were looking at the monitors and they're like, oh, the damage that the Seraphim caused knocked out some of the baby Denden Mushies, like the transponder snails that were the cameras. So that's why we can't see certain areas of the lab right now. There's certain areas that are offline. And Shaka mentions, yeah, those explosions that the Seraphim caused, it might have incapacitated some of the Denden Mushi or knocked them out of place. And I'm like, yeah, that's being very generous. They're probably all dead, because they're snails that got, like, destroyed by, like, when Mihawk, like, cut the entire lab in half, but whatever. So, Pythagoras, this is what I'm thinking. I'm really thinking, I mean, I guess this could have been Caribou, but because Caribou is like slimy and he's around the lab. He left the Sunny. He's somewhere lurking around, okay? But I don't know, man. I don't know if he's like just responsible for everything. If it's just like, oh yeah, it was Caribou the whole time. Or rather, Caribou might be a red herring. Caribou might be like discovered later. I mean, by like, oh, you're the one that lowered the Frontier Dome. You're the one that attacked Pythagoras. And Caribou's like, what? What are you talking about, Frontier Dome? I don't know anything about a Frontier Dome. I don't know how to work this kind of crap. This is all magic to me. And I was like, yeah, so I'm thinking it might be another one of the satellites. I'm not really sure. This might have been Caribou destroying the tower with Pythagoras in it. I don't know. Anywho, last scene of the chapter. We cut around a lot in this one. We cut over to the headquarters of the World Economy Journal, or the World Economic Times. There's different translations. The newspaper. We cut over to the headquarters of Big News Morgans. All right, now, Now, we've seen it before. It's a mobile headquarters because of Morgan's, it basically has to be. It's shaped like a tea kettle. It has a balloon, and it's carried by a bunch of the news crew. A bunch of the seagulls actually carry the whole thing around like a hot air balloon mobile fortress to wherever Morgan's, needs to get his big scoop of the week or whatever, okay? So, we see all the news crew flying around. We get a phone call, or the end of a phone call with Morgan's. He puts the Den Den Mushy down and he's like, big news! It would seem the government is trying to assassinate old man Vegapunk. Oh, the old man is so popular with the world. His technology caused all the places of the world to be lit up with science and energy. The general public will not like it too much if the government is threatening to kill him or trying to kill him, all right? So this is some big news here, right? So he begins to say and craft a headline as he does. He's like, I'm trying to think of a headline. Also, Monkey D. Luffy is on this island as well. Where's Luffy? Here he is. I'm thinking of this headline. Bombastic, second edition, full page spread. Monkey D. Luffy, Yonko Monkey D. Luffy, takes Dr. Vegapunk hostage. Oh, that'll sell some papers, and he says, I'm sure the government will appreciate that spin on the story. Go collect their contribution, as if he's taking, like, kickbacks from the government to print whatever story, I guess, makes him the most money, or whatever's the most interesting to him. Also, don't mess with Morgan's. He can punch you. He has, reporter punch. You don't want to mess with Morgan's. He is a giant big bird albatross, and he knows how to punch people, okay? But that's not really the crazy part of this. At the end of the chapter, we cut over to another section, like the other side of the room where Morgan's is speaking, and we see, sitting down on a chair, very comfortably, is Vivi! Nefeltari Vivi, the Princess of Alabasta! And we also see Wapol there as well. Wapol's just there, and he looks just very confused, just like, why am I here again? What? And so nobody's with them. We don't see Kinderella. Kinderella is Miss Universe, who's Wapol's wife. We don't see any of, like, Wapol's entourage next to him. Vivi's by herself, and she's sitting there. There's this cute little scene where Vivi is wearing a new outfit, because last time we saw her, she was in her dress when she went to Reverie. That was probably destroyed or ruined at this point. So she's wearing new clothing, and I guess she got it from one of the female reporters for the World Economic Times. And so in the background, you just see, like, this random woman working for the World Economic Times, like, I can't believe Lady Vivi is borrowing my clothing, oh my god! So she's, like, fangirling out back there, and Vivi is there, and she's just like, oh my god, Morgans, really? Luffy kidnapped Vegapunk and took him hostage. This is the most fake of fakest news I have ever read. And Morgans is just like, it doesn't matter if it's fake, it matters if it's big news, big news! You know what, you can't hate Morgans, like, he is duplicitous, he does his own thing, he takes kickback money from the government to print whatever stories they want to further their own propaganda, but, like, Morgans at the end of the day is just like, you know what? I know what I have. You know what Morgans has? Morgans has the ability to shape the entire world, because there's no other major newspaper. You have to understand, he has a global monopoly. A global fucking monopoly on newspapers, on the media. They don't have the news in One Piece. They don't have, like, you can't turn on NBC or CNN or freaking Fox News in the One Piece world. That doesn't exist. Everybody gets their information via newspapers. Morgans controls all of the newspapers, and he knows it, and he's just like, ha ha ha, I control everything, and he's like revels in it. So it's the kind of, he's a villain, definitely, and he's very just, not a good guy in terms of what he does and the consequences of what happens when he prints these stories, but it's the kind of villain that's like, man, he's kind of evil, but he revels in it. He knows he's evil, and he's just like, this is what I do, So, yeah. Anyway, so a lot of people were thinking Vivi got, like, me included, Vivi got, like, kidnapped by Eam, because, Eam was, like, looking at Vivi's picture. It's like, oh, Eam must have taken Vivi in the castle, in the dungeons. Or maybe Sabo escaped with Vivi. No, Vivi and Wapol ended up at the World Economic Journal. That, yeah, that one was, I didn't see that coming. If anybody won that, you won the pot on that. I swear to God. Like, if we were taking bets on this, it's like, okay, let's say 1 to 3 odds that Vivi is in the hands of Eam-sama right now. All right. How about 1 to 9 odds that Sabo knows where Vivi's at right now? Yeah. This would have probably been like 1 to 1,000 odds. Oh, yeah. She's with Morgans and Wapol. So whoever placed that bet, congratulations, you win the jackpot. So they're there. Wapol is very anxious because he knows this is the World Economic Times. There's connections with the government. So he's like, be very, very careful about what you say. They could have had this place wiretapped. They might know what we're saying. They might know that we're here right now and we're not supposed to be, you know, and Vivi just doesn't give a shit. She does not care. You know, Vivi's a bit of a girl boss. Now that I'm starting to notice. Girl boss Vivi, damn straight. And so the last scene of the chapter right now is just Morgan stating, you know, big talk for a girl who was crying yesterday, referring to Vivi, who was very upset. Don't look down on me or tell me how to do my job. My words can shake the entire world. Besides, news isn't about fact or fiction. It's about entertainment. Big news. You know, so he has like I said, not a great guy. He has the flair, though. You know, he has the flair, okay? He revels in his own, like, manipulation of the world media, you know what I mean? So, I don't even know where this happened. Now, okay. Wapol was leaking information to Morgans. That was something that was confirmed before. After Morgans punched out that government agent that was masquerading as a Tatch, and they were leaving, he got a call that was like, it's the king of the Black Drum Kingdom, Wapol. He says he's got some big news for you about the Reverie. So there's where the connection there is. Okay, at the Reverie... All right, I'm assuming there was chaos whenever the government, whenever the admirals, Green Bull and Fujitora, were fighting against Sabo and the revolutionaries. That would have caused chaos, which I guess might have resulted in Wapol taking Vivi and then getting to Morgan's place? Maybe? I don't know. I have to think about this one a bit. Now, back to Caribou. Every time Caribou overhears something very important, he's always like, I can't wait to tell that person about it. You know, and I'm pretty sure that's Morgan's now, okay? Could have been Blackbeard, could have been some other person, but I'm thinking it's Morgan's, okay? Because I could see Caribou allied with Blackbeard, but I could also see Caribou allied with Morgan's, you know what I mean? So, like, he knows about Uranus, and he knows about Poseidon, because, you know, well, he doesn't know about Uranus where it is, but he knows about the names of the 3 ancient weapons. He knows about Poseidon, because he overheard what Robin was saying to Neptune at Fishman Island. And he also knows about Pluton, because he was there overhearing the whole thing, what was going on with Sukiyake and Robin and Law and everything, so he knows about Pluton. Yeah. He was like, I can't wait to tell this person about it. I think it was Morgan. So I think the person that Morgan's just got off the phone with was Caribou. I think Caribou found a Dendin Mushi and relayed the information to him. Now, about the person that turned off the Frontier Dome, that attacked Pythagoras, I think we're still dealing with 2 people here, even if you account for Caribou. Unless Oda spins it where Caribou is this genius Machiavellian schemer that's like a brilliant like hacker or whatever like that, I don't think this is going to work too well, okay? Yeah, but hey, it's nice to see Vivi still alive. She's doing well. She doesn't look injured at all. She was very upset the previous day, probably because her dad's dead. That would probably, yeah, that would probably do it for that, because Cobra's definitely dead at this point. It says Princess of Alabasta, not Queen of Alabasta. I guess technically she would not become the Queen until she goes through like an official, coronation ceremony, whatever they do in Alabasta. So, but technically speaking, if Cobra is dead and his wife is also dead years ago, Vivi's mom, Titi, if she's dead, then I guess, yeah, it would be Vivi that leads the country. It's just that, you know, she's not there right now, but she would be the Queen of Alabasta, effectively. So, yeah, what do you call it when there's like the moment in between becoming a princess and a queen, but it hasn't become like in America, whenever we elect a new president, before the inauguration, the president is the president-elect, okay? So is there a term for that with princess, like queen-elect or queen to the throne or something. I don't know. Is there a term for that? I don't know. Anyway, Princess Plus. I don't know. Anyway, Wapol's there, and he's not going to be a major threat. Wapol just looks terrified of even being there right now. At the end of the day, without his whole retinue to back him up, Wapol is a coward. Remember that. He left Drum Island to Blackbeard because he was a coward. You know, if he doesn't have everybody around him helping him out, if he's around really strong people, or if he's afraid of being attacked by the government, like right here, he shits bricks, okay? He's scared. So I wouldn't really worry too much about Wapol right now. He might be an annoyance, but Vivi doesn't seem to care at all. By the way, not the first time Wapol and Vivi have met each other. Vivi did not meet Wapol, I think, at all during the Drum Island arc when she was there, but years and years ago, when she attended the Reverie, I think when she was only like, she was 8 or 10 years old or something like that, that was the one where Cobra yelled at Wapol because they were talking about Dragon, and it's just like, be really careful of Monkey D. Dragon. He's gonna like take over the world. He's gonna try to like cause all these rebellions and everything like that. And then Wapol's there picking his nose, just like, whatever, I don't care about some stupid revolutionary. Maybe you idiots and your countries are gonna go crazy with a revolution, but mine won't. And then Cobra gets up and like yells at Wapol, like, you stupid fool, do you not care about anybody but yourself? And then Wapol, when they were leaving, was just like, oh, you know what, that stupid Cobra, I'm gonna get back at him. And then he literally slaps Vivi, who was like, I think 10 at the time, and then boom, hits the floor, and then like Wapol's like, oh no, my hand slipped, bam, you know, and just like, okay. But Vivi was able to take that in stride because she knew, even if that at that age, like, if I throw a tantrum here and yell, that could result in a war, okay, where tensions are high. So she gets up and she's just like, I'm sorry for getting in your way, sir. And then Wapol's like, yeah, well, you just watch where you're going next time. Yeah. And he just like walks away. And then Vivi goes over to Igaram, and she's crying, and she's like, it hurts so bad. He's like, but Igaram is like, I am so proud of you, princess. I love that scene. That was a really good scene. That was the scene that Dalton, he was reminiscing of, like, the first time he met Vivi, because Dalton was there as well as a guard for Wapol at the Reverie at the time. So, not the first time they met. I don't think Wapol may remember her, but Wapol's so self-centered, probably not. Vivi probably remembers Wapol, and she's like, I am not taking any of your shit right now, okay? So, yeah. Anyway, that was the end of the chapter. A lot of stuff to cover with this. Where's Vegapunk's main body at? Who attacked Pythagoras? Are Rob Lucci and Kaku going to become foremen for Galay La? What's up with Bonnie and the memory bubble? And who got where does Morgan cite his sources from? I don't know. But thanks for watching the video, everybody. This will be Tekking, signing out. Later.